My name is Isabella Harris, and for as long as I can remember, I believed that dedication, sweat, and family would always pay off in the end. That if you gave every ounce of your energy to your loved ones, they'd never let you down. I believed that until one Thursday evening, when I discovered my parents had handed over the leadership of the company I'd poured my soul into, to my younger cousin, without a single conversation. But let's rewind. Before the fracture, before the echo of betrayal, I was fiercely proud of what I'd accomplished. At 28, I took the reins at Harris & Associates, a family-owned architectural and design firm known for transforming tired city blocks into vibrant communities. My parents, Richard and Lillian Harris, had started it in a dusty garage in Cleveland, Ohio, back when I was still playing hopscotch on the sidewalk. Back then, it was tiny home renovations and budget kitchen remodels. I remember watching my dad haul lumber with calloused hands, while my mom balanced invoices on the kitchen table, the printer jamming every other day. When I graduated with my dual degree in architecture and urban planning, I came home not for a paycheck, but to breathe new life into their legacy. I never imagined that same legacy would become the stage for my greatest heartbreak. The turning point came on a rainy afternoon in late November, the kind of day when the sky seemed to press down on the city, leaving everything damp and cold. I had just wrapped up the final pitch to secure a multi-million-dollar contract with Eastwood Developments, a project that would cement Harris & Associates as the top urban revitalization firm in the region. It was the kind of deal I'd spent years preparing for, carefully building trust with the client, ensuring every design detail was perfect, and even pulling a few all-nighters to adjust budgets and materials. After the meeting, I ducked into my office to grab the project notes. I had 1,000 details running through my mind: client expectations, contractor timelines, and vendor negotiations. I needed to get everything in order before the board reviewed the final presentation. But on my chair, in place of the project binder I expected, was a single envelope. No fancy logo, no formal letterhead, just my name scrawled in my father's familiar handwriting. I frowned, unease prickling my skin. My parents weren't the type to leave handwritten notes unless it was a birthday card or an apology for missing dinner. I opened the envelope slowly, half expecting to find a thank you note for closing the Eastwood deal. Instead, it was a copy of a corporate resolution. Ryan Harris, my younger cousin by 2 years, appointed CEO of Harris & Associates. Effective immediately. My breath caught, my pulse thundered in my ears. My name wasn't anywhere on the document, no mention of my role, my title, my contribution, just Ryan's name, inked in bold, as if he'd earned it, as if he'd put in the years of sweat and sacrifice that I had. I sat there, numb, as the rain tapped against the office window like an accusation. Ryan, who'd spent most of his 20s dabbling in everything from real estate seminars to failed e-commerce ventures, always chasing the next big thing. Ryan, who'd been finding himself, while I was working 16-hour days and signing contracts that kept the lights on. Memories of the past few years flickered through my mind like a broken film reel. Ryan breezing into staff meetings with half-baked ideas, proposing a digital marketing overhaul with no budget, suggesting a complete office remodel mid-fiscal year, and my parents, always supportive, always eager to see him find his place. Meanwhile, I was left to clean up the messes he made, to reassure vendors and clients that yes, Harris & Associates was still a professional operation. But this was more than a mess. This was a betrayal. I rose from my chair, every muscle in my body tense, and stormed down the hallway, past the framed awards and glossy project photos I'd personally overseen. I paused outside the conference room, where Ryan was holding court with a group of junior designers, laughing like he didn't have a care in the world, like he hadn't just stolen everything I'd built. I pushed open the door. Heads turned, conversations halted. Ryan looked up, surprised, his smile faltering. "Isabella," he began, but I held up a hand, my voice cold. "Save it." I turned and walked out, the eyes of my team on my back. I could feel their confusion, their questions. I didn't owe them answers, not yet. I spent the weekend in my apartment, surrounded by files, contracts, and half-finished designs. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. My mind raced with everything I'd given to this company, my weekends, my relationships, my health. And for what? For a family that saw me as expendable the moment someone with a vision walked in? By Monday morning, I had made a decision. If they wanted Ryan to run the company, he could. Let him figure out why the Baxter Heights project was stalling, or why the riverfront renovation was weeks behind schedule. Let him explain to the clients why invoices weren't matching estimates. Let him hold the line with contractors who would eat him alive. I logged into the company server from home and began the painstaking process of backing up my personal files. Every design document, every vendor contact, every system guide I'd built from scratch, I archived them all. Then I removed my contributions from the shared drive. I didn't destroy anything. I wasn't petty. I simply removed myself from the equation. If they wanted Ryan as CEO, let him prove he could handle it without me. Tuesday morning, I didn't show up for work. I didn't answer calls. Didn't respond to the increasingly frantic emails from my father. By Thursday, my mother called, her voice strained. Isabella, honey, we need to talk. Eastwood is getting nervous. They're asking for you on the project. I nearly laughed. Of course they were. I'd been the one who landed Eastwood. The one who'd built the trust. But now it was Ryan's problem. I let the call go to voicemail. By Friday, the desperation had set in. Ryan himself called, twice. I let both calls ring out. He left one message, his voice uncertain. Izzy, I know you're upset. I didn't ask for this. Dad and Aunt Lillian thought this was best for the company. I'm in over my head here. I could really use your help. A wave of exhaustion washed over me. He didn't ask for it? That was the excuse? He had accepted the title. He had walked into the corner office with my name still on half the documents. He had taken the responsibility, but not the accountability. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood by the window, watching the rain turn the city lights into a blurry watercolor. I thought about the sacrifices I'd made, the friends I'd drifted from, the vacations I'd skipped, the sleepless nights spent fixing problems no one else even knew existed. And I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was done being angry. I was done being the safety net. I was ready to let them fall. That was the moment everything shifted. By the following Monday, the tension in the office had reached a fever pitch. Even though I wasn't physically there to witness it, the calls kept coming. First from my father. Then from the project managers. Then from accounting. Each one more urgent than the last. Each one a reminder that, despite their grand plans to install Ryan as the visionary CEO, they hadn't prepared him for the realities of running Harris & Associates. Tuesday morning, my phone buzzed with a desperate message from Karen Lopez, our head accountant, whose steady hand had guided us through more financial storms than I could count. Isabella, she wrote, the Eastwood Developments contract is unraveling. They're threatening to walk if you're not personally overseeing the project. Ryan doesn't have the details they need. And I can't stall them much longer. Can you please help? I read her message twice. A bitter sense of irony washing over me. The same contract that had once been the shining proof of my dedication was now the noose tightening around the necks of the people who had so carelessly cut me out. I didn't respond. By midday, I'd received 3 more voicemails from Clint Harris, our lead project manager and my cousin on my mother's side. His usually calm voice was strained. Panicked. Izzy, I'm sorry to bother you, but I can't find the final specs for the Greenfield Towers project. Ryan said you'd handled them and that they should be on the shared drive. But they're not there. The client is expecting an update by 4 p.m. I know you're mad, but I don't know what to do. Please. Again, I didn't respond. By Wednesday afternoon, the unraveling had gone from bad to catastrophic. The Eastwood team officially pulled out, citing lack of confidence in leadership. A $6.5 million project, gone. And with it, the credibility of Harris & Associates started to crumble. My father, desperate now, sent me a message that simply read, "Call me, we need you, please." But I wasn't ready to be their savior. Not yet. I spent those days in the small studio apartment I'd rented after college. The one I'd never really had time to make feel like home. The walls were still the same bland off-white. The furniture a mismatch of hand-me-downs and cheap IKEA finds. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I took long walks by the river, letting the cold November wind sting my cheeks, hoping the sharpness would chase away the lingering bitterness in my heart. On Thursday morning, as I sipped coffee from my chipped mug, I heard a knock at the door. I hesitated for a moment, wondering who would come by unannounced. When I opened the door, my mother stood there, clutching a Tupperware container of homemade lasagna like it was a shield. Her eyes were red, and her shoulders slumped under the weight of everything that had happened. "Hi, sweetheart," she said softly. "Can I come in?" I stood aside. Wordlessly, she set the container on the counter. And for a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, she sighed. "Your father is a mess. Ryan is completely overwhelmed. The staff is on the verge of mutiny. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But we need you, Isabella. The company needs you." I folded my arms, my jaw tightening. "Now you need me? Now that the contracts are falling apart and the clients are leaving?" Tears filled her eyes. "We made a mistake," she whispered. "We thought giving Ryan the title would help him grow up, help him find his place. But we didn't see how much you were holding everything together until you were gone." I laughed bitterly. "So now that you've realized I'm indispensable, you want me to come back and fix your mess?" She flinched, her hands twisting the hem of her sweater. "Please, Isabella, your father won't admit it. But he's terrified. Ryan's terrified. They thought they were protecting you from burning out, but they burned the whole company down instead." I shook my head, my chest tight. I spent years giving everything to that company. I sacrificed my time, my health, my relationships, hell, my entire sense of self-worth, and you all handed it over to Ryan like it was a game of Monopoly. She reached for my hand, but I pulled back. I can't just walk back in like nothing happened. Mom, I can't pretend the betrayal didn't cut me to the bone. She nodded slowly. "I understand, but please, just talk to your father. Help us find a way through this. For the sake of the company." I looked out the window. The city skyline a blur of gray and steel. I thought about all the projects I'd fought for, the clients I'd won over, the nights I'd spent hunched over plans and contracts while everyone else was at home with their families. And then I thought about Ryan. About how he'd taken the title without the burden of the work that came with it. About how he'd stepped into my shoes without a second thought, while I was left on the outside looking in. My mother's voice trembled. "Please, Isabella, at least talk to him." I turned back to her, my eyes cold. "Fine," I said, "but this time, I'm not coming back to patch things up. I'm coming back to set the terms." She nodded, relief flooding her face. "Thank you." As she left, I closed the door behind her and leaned against it, the weight of the conversation pressing down on me. This wasn't about saving the company anymore. This was about reclaiming my worth, my voice, my power. If they wanted me back, it would be on my terms, or not at all. By Friday morning, I was done letting them dictate the terms of my worth. I had spent too many years swallowing every slight, every snub, every well-meaning but clueless attempt to sideline me for the sake of family harmony. It wasn't just about Ryan being named CEO anymore. It was about every time my ideas had been overlooked. Every moment I'd been expected to smile and say, "Sure," while carrying the weight of the entire company on my shoulders. So when my father finally called and left a voicemail, "We need to talk. Please meet us at the Lakeside Grill at 3 p.m. I didn't feel dread or fear. I felt resolute. I wasn't walking into that meeting as the dutiful daughter anymore. I was walking in as the woman who had built their empire and had the right to shape its future. The Lakeside Grill was the kind of place that tried too hard to be upscale. White tablecloths, candle centerpieces, a hostess with a frozen smile. I walked in wearing my navy pantsuit, hair pulled back in a low chignon, every inch of me radiating the message, "I am not here to beg." I spotted them immediately. My father, looking older than I remembered, the lines around his eyes deeper, his shoulders hunched. My mother, her hands wrapped tightly around a half-empty glass of Chardonnay. And Ryan, staring at the floor, unable to meet my gaze. I took a breath and walked over. "Afternoon," I said, my voice even. I didn't hug them. I didn't sit until they invited me to. This wasn't a family dinner. This was a negotiation. My father cleared his throat. Isabella, thank you for coming. I sat down slowly, crossing my legs, hands folded on the table. You asked me here. I'm listening. He exchanged a glance with my mother, then looked at me, his jaw working like he was trying to find the right words. We made a mistake, he began, voice low. I thought that giving Ryan the CEO title would give the company a fresh vision, a new direction. But I didn't realize how much you were the foundation of everything we've built. I took that for granted. I didn't respond. I wanted him to feel every second of the silence that followed. Ryan finally looked up, his eyes rimmed with red. Izzy, he said, voice cracking. I didn't ask for any of this. Dad came to me and said you needed a break. That you were burning out. That maybe I could step up. I thought I could help. I met his gaze squarely. Help? I asked. By taking the position I'd earned through a decade of work? By letting me find out through a memo that I'd been replaced? You didn't even have the decency to talk to me first. He winced. I know, and I'm sorry. I thought it would be temporary. I didn't realize how much you'd given up to keep this company running. I see that now. My mother reached out, tears streaking her mascara. We're falling apart without you. Isabella, she whispered, the staff is confused. The clients are leaving, and your father and I don't know how to fix it. I let out a slow breath. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The shift from being the obedient daughter to being the partner they needed. I'm not coming back to clean up your mess. Mom, I said, my voice steady. I'm not coming back to be the one holding the walls up while Ryan plays visionary. I turned to my father. If you want me back, it's on my terms, and only my terms. His eyes narrowed slightly. What terms? I leaned forward, my gaze unwavering. First, I want 35% equity in the company. Not a handshake promise, real shares. With executive voting rights. Second, I want a co-CEO structure. Ryan can keep his title. But every major decision requires both our signatures. No more backroom deals. No more surprises. Third, I want full authority over operations, staffing, contracts, financials. Everything that actually makes this company run. Ryan's eyes widened. That's a lot of power, he said, his voice tentative. I met his gaze. It's what I've earned. And let's be honest, power isn't the problem here. The problem is that you tried to take something you didn't understand. And now it's falling apart. If I'm going to fix this, I need the authority to do it right. My father's jaw clenched. You're asking us to hand over a third of the company. I shook my head. No, I'm asking you to recognize the third I've already built. Every client relationship, every system, every contract that's kept us afloat, that was me. I'm not asking for a favor. I'm demanding what I've earned. The silence that followed was the kind that crackled with tension. I could see the war in my father's eyes, his pride battling with his desperation. Finally, he sighed. You'd really walk away from this? You'd let the company collapse? I didn't blink. I'd rather watch it burn than let you treat me like an afterthought again. My mother gasped softly. Ryan looked down at the table. Shoulders slumped. My father stared at me. And for the first time, I saw real fear there. Okay, he said finally, his voice hoarse. We'll draft the paperwork. You'll get your equity, your voting rights, your co-CEO position. And God help us, you'll have the authority you need. Relief surged through me, but I kept my face neutral. Good, I said, because this time, I'm not cleaning up your mess as your daughter. I'm cleaning it up as your equal. And just like that, the dynamic had shifted forever. By Monday morning, the dust had barely settled. But the energy around Harris and Associates felt completely different. My official equity agreement had been drafted, signed, and notarized. 35% ownership, shared executive voting rights, and a co-CEO title that carried real authority. For the first time, I wasn't the one chasing validation. I was the one setting the terms. Walking back into the office that day felt like entering a war zone. But instead of landmines, the air was thick with uncertainty. People watched me as I crossed the lobby, some with hope, others with suspicion, a few with barely concealed relief. Clint, our senior project manager, stood near the reception, his expression a mix of awe and exhaustion. Welcome back, Isabella, he said, his voice low. We really needed you. I nodded. But I didn't let the sentimentality linger. Thanks, Clint. Let's get to work. Inside the conference room, Ryan sat at the head of the table, a stack of client files in front of him, his eyes bloodshot from a weekend of chaos management. He looked up as I entered, his expression equal parts contrition and relief. Hey, he started, but I cut him off with a simple gesture. We'll talk later. Right now, we need to stabilize the ship. He nodded, grateful. I turned to the team. First order of business, client retention. I projected a list of our top 10 clients on the screen. Names I had personally courted and secured through years of relationship building. These clients have contracts worth over $20 million combined. They're our lifeblood. Every single one has voiced concerns about leadership stability in the past week. If we lose them, we might as well shut the doors. The room was silent. Even Ryan looked pale. I continued, we're going to launch a proactive outreach strategy. Each of you will take 2 clients. You'll schedule calls today. No excuses. You'll reassure them that I'm back and that our operations are secure. Karen Lopez, our head accountant, raised a hand. What about the Eastwood Developments project? They've already walked. I exhaled, my heart heavy. We're not going to chase them down. But we're going to make sure every other client knows we're not going anywhere. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. And what about the staff? Morale's in the basement. I looked at him squarely. That's on both of us. I'll handle the operational side. Get the workflows back in order. Fix the contracts. Get the vendors on board. You focus on rebuilding the trust with the younger staff. You've always had a knack for that. He blinked, surprised. You'd trust me with that? I met his gaze without hesitation. If we're going to make this co-CEO structure work, you have to lead, too. I can't be the only one steering the ship. But understand this. Any major decision goes through me. No exceptions. He nodded, the relief evident on his face. That afternoon, I gathered the senior leadership team for a private meeting. I could see the exhaustion in their eyes. The wariness. They'd been through hell the last few weeks. Look, I began, my voice strong but calm. I know it's been chaotic. I know you've all been asked to do more than is reasonable. And I know trust in leadership has taken a hit. I paused, letting the silence settle. But we're not here to wallow in that. We're here to rebuild. I'm back, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm committed to every single one of you and to this company's future. Clint raised a hand. And Ryan? He asked, his tone respectful but cautious. I turned to Ryan, who had chosen to sit beside me rather than at the head of the table this time. Ryan is still here, I said evenly. He's co-CEO. And he'll be focusing on client relationships and creative vision. We're in this together. But let me be clear. Every decision that affects operations, finances, or client trust will have my signature on it. That's not negotiable. A collective breath seemed to release from the room. Any questions? I asked. No one spoke. Good, I said, standing. Then let's get to work. Over the next week, I worked 12-hour days rebuilding the foundation Ryan had inadvertently fractured. I reopened lines of communication with key vendors, restructured the project management workflows, and set up daily check-ins with every department. I personally called every major client, including Anderson Group, which had been on the verge of pulling out. Isabella, their CEO, said on the phone, his voice calm but tinged with relief. We were worried. We thought the leadership change meant instability. But hearing from you directly? That changes everything. I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. You have my word that your project is my priority. I'm here to see it through. By Friday, the tide had begun to turn. Vendors were responding. Clients were expressing renewed confidence. Even the staff, who had been walking on eggshells, started to relax. One evening, as I sat in my office sorting through the mountain of pending contracts, Ryan knocked softly and stepped in, holding 2 cups of coffee. Peace offering, he said, his voice tentative. I accepted the cup, the warmth seeping into my hands. Thanks, I said quietly. He sat across from me, looking down at his shoes. Izzy, I know I messed up. I didn't understand what this job really meant. I thought CEO was about the big picture. The vision. I didn't see the grind. The relationships. The constant fires to put out. I sipped the coffee, watching him. I want to learn, he said finally, meeting my gaze. I want to be someone you can actually rely on. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. Then let's make this work, I said, but understand, respect is earned. You'll have to prove to everyone here that you're not just another title. He nodded, his face serious. I will. And in that moment, I believed him. The following weeks marked a transformation in both Ryan and me. A shift neither of us could have predicted in those tense early days of our partnership. The first Monday of our new co-CEO era, I walked into the office at 7 a.m., as usual. Ready to put out fires before most people had even had their coffee. But as I reached my glass-walled office, I saw Ryan already there, sleeves rolled up, staring at a spreadsheet on his laptop like it was written in Greek. Morning, I greeted him, surprised but not showing it. He looked up, eyes tired but determined. Morning, Izzy. I'm, trying to understand the billing cycle. Karen's been on me about invoices. And I realized I didn't even know where to start. I paused at the doorway. This was the same cousin who used to breeze into meetings late, making jokes about creative synergy, while the rest of us handled the work. Now he looked like a rookie intern on his first day. Let's walk through it, I said, and pulled up a chair. That morning, I taught Ryan about NET 30 terms, late fees, vendor negotiations, and why our contractors expected certain payments on specific milestones. As I explained, I could see the realization dawning on his face. It wasn't that he was lazy or incompetent. He just never had to learn the gritty operational details that kept this place running. I had no idea it was this complicated, he said finally, his voice low. I gave a small, tired smile. Welcome to my world. Over the next few days, we met every morning for an hour. I walked him through cash flow projections, contract clauses, change orders, and vendor agreements. Every time I'd expect him to tune out or push back. But he didn't. He took notes. He asked questions. Sometimes he even challenged me, politely, on decisions I'd made in the past. At first, I bristled at his questions. My pride screamed that he hadn't earned the right to challenge me. But then I realized, this was the growth I demanded from him. He was finally stepping up. One afternoon, after a brutal meeting with an upset client, Ryan's first real taste of managing fallout, he slumped into the chair across from my desk. Looking defeated. I'm not cut out for this. Izzy, he muttered, I can't talk them down the way you do. They were yelling, and I froze. I didn't know what to say. I set down my pen and leaned back. Ryan, you don't have to be me. You just have to be honest. Tell the client the truth. Tell them you're learning, and that you're committed to making it right. He looked up, his eyes uncertain. You think that's enough? I nodded. It's more than most leaders do. Most hide behind corporate jargon or blame someone else. You own it. People respect that. For the first time, he managed a small, grateful smile. Later that week, I saw him approach Karen to ask about a discrepancy in the books instead of ignoring it like he used to. I overheard him telling Clint he'd review a project plan before greenlighting it. He even started asking the designers for their input instead of steamrolling his ideas through. And the staff noticed. One morning, I walked into the break room to grab coffee and heard two junior designers whispering. I can't believe Ryan actually asked for my feedback on the community center proposal. One said, it's like he's different. Yeah, the other replied, Izzy coming back really changed things. I turned the corner, coffee in hand, and gave them both a small smile. Thanks, I said softly. We're all learning. They both flushed, a little embarrassed, but they smiled back. But it wasn't just Ryan growing. I was changing too. For the first time, I allowed myself to delegate, truly delegate, instead of hoarding every responsibility out of fear someone else would drop the ball. I trusted Clint to handle the Baxter Heights redesign. Even when my instincts screamed to oversee every detail, I let Karen take point on renegotiating some vendor contracts. And the world didn't end. Instead, I found time to breathe, to think strategically instead of always firefighting. I started to see the bigger picture I'd ignored for so long. The potential to expand Harris and Associates into new markets. To invest in sustainable materials. To partner with community organizations and give back to the city that had given us so much. One Thursday evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline and the office quieted, Ryan knocked on my door, a hesitant smile on his face. "Hey, Izzy," he said, "I wanted to run something by you." I waved him in. "Shoot." He handed me a rough sketch of a community center, an idea he'd been kicking around before all the drama started. "I think this could be our next big project. It's ambitious, but it would put us on the map in terms of public works. And I'd love to lead it. With your guidance." I studied the sketch, the lines still rough but filled with promise. I thought about how far he'd come. About how far we'd both come. "Let's do it," I said, a genuine smile spreading across my face. His eyes lit up. "Really? Really," I confirmed. "But remember, this time, we're building it together." He nodded, and for the first time, I saw not just my cousin but my partner. That night, as I walked out of the office and breathed in the cool evening air, I realized that growth wasn't just about proving myself to them anymore. It was about proving to myself that I could lead, collaborate, and even trust again. Maybe family wasn't always the easiest path, but sometimes, it was the one that taught you the most. It's funny how life can spin your world upside down and then drop it back into place. But never quite in the same way. Standing on the top floor of Harris and Associates that Friday evening, I looked out over the Cleveland skyline, the city lights winking in the distance like a promise. The office was quiet, just the soft hum of the HVAC system and the occasional creak of the old hardwood floors. It had been a long road to get here, but for the first time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. 2 months had passed since that pivotal meeting at the Lakeside Grill, and the transformation within our company, and within me, was undeniable. Staff who had once felt adrift now stood taller, emboldened by the steadying force of a leadership team that actually knew how to lead. Vendors who'd nearly walked away were back at the table, shaking hands and signing new contracts. And the clients, the lifeblood of any business, were no longer on edge. But the most significant change was inside these walls. Ryan and I had found a rhythm that worked. Every Monday morning, we held a joint CEO meeting with our leadership team. Ryan, once the reluctant leader, now brought a steady stream of fresh ideas, some good, some wild, but all delivered with humility. And me? I was no longer just the fixer. I had become the architect of the future. Someone who could build systems while also building people. It wasn't always easy. There were days when the old wounds would surface, when I'd catch myself second-guessing his motives or bracing for betrayal. But then I'd remember the lessons I'd learned. Loyalty means nothing without respect. Family means little without truth. And so, I kept showing up, and so did he. One rainy Wednesday morning, Ryan knocked on my office door, a hesitant look on his face. "Got a minute?" he asked. "Always," I replied. He stepped in and closed the door. "Listen," he began, voice low, "I know we've come a long way. But I wanted to say, thank you. For giving me a second chance to prove myself. I didn't deserve it, but you gave it to me anyway." I studied him for a long moment. The man who had once felt like the embodiment of every obstacle I'd faced. But now, he was something more, a partner. An ally, even a brother in arms. "You earned it," I said simply. "I'm proud of you, Ryan, truly." He smiled, a real one, and I felt something deep inside me finally let go, a tension I'd carried for far too long. That afternoon, we stood side by side at the company's quarterly review, presenting our wins and our challenges. I watched the staff, faces I'd come to know like family, lean forward with interest instead of dread. They trusted us. They believed in us. Clint, our senior project manager, stood to address the room. I think I speak for everyone when I say, it's good to have stability back. But more than that, it's good to see leadership that actually works together. The room erupted in applause. I felt my throat tighten, the emotion raw and unfiltered. Later that evening, I found myself on the office balcony. The city spread out below like a living, breathing testament to resilience. Ryan joined me, leaning against the railing with a tired sigh. "We did it," he said, his voice filled with a mixture of relief and pride. "Yeah," I replied softly, "we did." He turned to me. "So what's next?" I thought for a moment, letting the question settle. "Next," I said, "we expand. We innovate. We make Harris and Associates the name people think of when they think of transformation, not just in buildings, but in communities, in lives. He grinned. I like that. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the kid who'd stumbled into my world unprepared, but the man who'd fought to stand beside me. Let's build it together, I said. He nodded. Together. As we watched the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of gold and crimson, I thought back to the beginning, to that Friday afternoon when I'd found that envelope on my chair. Back then, it had felt like the end of everything I'd worked for. But now, standing here with Ryan and our team, I realized it had only been the beginning. The beginning of me finding my voice. The beginning of me setting boundaries. The beginning of me defining my worth not by the approval of others, but by the strength of my own convictions. I wasn't just the operational backbone anymore. I was a leader in every sense of the word. And as I breathed in the cool evening air, I thought about the clients who had stuck with us, the staff who had trusted me, and the city that had become my canvas. I realized I wasn't just building projects, I was building a legacy. A legacy that couldn't be erased by a signature on a piece of paper. A legacy that would endure because I had the courage to demand respect, even when it hurt. A legacy that would shape not just Harris and Associates, but the communities we served. And with that, I turned to Ryan, determination in my eyes. Let's go show them what we're made of. He smiled. Let's. Together, we stepped back into the office, ready to face whatever came next, united, stronger, and finally on our own terms. Because sometimes, the best stories aren't about one hero or one villain. Sometimes, they're about finding a way to rise together. And in that moment, I knew we were unstoppable. Looking back on everything that had happened, I realized that loyalty alone was never enough. You can pour your heart into a company, a family, a dream, but without respect and trust, loyalty turns into a chain that keeps you from living your truth. It was only when I demanded to be valued, and held my ground, that I found the strength to truly lead. Respect isn't given because of a title or a bloodline, it's earned through resilience, grit, and standing up for yourself, even when it's uncomfortable. Family can be your greatest ally or your deepest wound. But in the end, your worth isn't defined by who shares your last name, it's defined by what you stand for and what you refuse to compromise on. I learned that power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your value and refusing to let anyone take it for granted. I am no longer afraid to be the architect of my own destiny, and that's a legacy no one can take away from me. In the real world, it's easy to think loyalty alone will get you where you want to be, at work, at home, in life. But the truth is, respect must walk hand in hand with loyalty. If you're always the one fixing problems but never the one making decisions, it's time to reevaluate your boundaries. Demand clear communication and set expectations. Don't be afraid to walk away from places that refuse to value you. It's not about burning bridges, it's about building your own. Document your contributions, so that when the time comes, you can show your worth in black and white. And above all, remember that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is be silent. Let the silence show others what it feels like to lose you. Because in that silence, they'll finally hear what you've been saying all along. Thank you for choosing to listen to this story among thousands of stories out there. Like and subscribe to continue listening to the latest stories.